trying to make an impression of someone who is very sophisticated and intelligent. And as I look into the distance, being deeply concerned by fate of humanity, you can clearly see that I am an enlightened one, and my opinions matter more than yours. Like this video if you think I succeeded. Anyhow, using the opportunity that I needed to replace a tire on my road bike, and as you can see this is a road bike because there's a sport written here, and that's a tire. So it must be for a road bike because everything that has a sport on it, if it's cycling related, it must be for a road, right? Anyhow, as I was replacing it, because the previous one wore out, surprise, I decided to go tubeless. And of course, the entire internet told me that I shouldn't be doing this on tires that are very skinny. So, imagine what happens when the internet tells me that I shouldn't be doing something. So, I did the entire voodoo. I rim stripped the rims, I have added the sealant, I have put the tires, not in that order. Everything went great, although the front tire is used, and as you can imagine, the used tires tend to have holes in them where something punctured the tire at some point, and if you would be using a tube, you would have a patch on it, so it would, well, armor somewhat the entry wound. There were holes, some were quite significant, so when I added the sealant, I would have the sealant being squirted out. Not a very good situation, so I, well, primitively patched the tire, everything sealed, and it was a success. So I went for a ride today, and I have to say that the initial impression was phenomenal. It was like gliding. Even though I used slightly lower pressure, I'm even going to say that it was supple. That's going to go into a hashtag. About 1.35 km, I got a puncture on my front. And as you can see, there's this blob dried out of sealant. However, before it sealed, it was squirting the sealant everywhere. So I was kind of worried whether I'm going to be returning home, because I'm not really certain whether the internet was right or I am again the genius that's going to be, well, recognized as a genius after my demise. Anyhow, it sealed. However, as I was pondering the fate of the universe, well, whether it sealed, I struck, that would be a better word, I struck a curb with my rear wheel. So, as this was working perfectly fine, this was gushing sealant everywhere, and considering that this is a road tire, it has a very low volume, so I lost like half of the pressure. However, because I also got a puncture here, precisely in the place where I struck the curb, I would also lose some air from there before it sealed. So when I finally sealed, I lost 90% of tire pressure, which is kind of a problem if you want to ride further. So what did I do? I tried the pump, but it turns out that my pump doesn't really like these valves here because they are pressed up. So I did the second best thing. I tried to find a gas station, and I found one, and there was a compressor there. So I used a presta-ed shredder adapter, and it didn't work because it was one of those newfangled compressors where you set the pressure and then the very smart compressor inside tries to check whether the machinery pumps the pressure you desired. However, that machine requires a fully open valve to operate because it consistently is measuring pressure. However, Presta, when pumped through an adapter, just closes when the pressure stops, so the machine couldn't measure the pressure, so what I get was something like this. So I didn't have the pump, didn't have the pressure, and didn't have the compressor which I could use. So you can imagine that was a rather clumsy return home. However, I have to say that I am kind of impressed with this because I was riding with this. You can see here, there's nothing here. and I managed to get home, even though I hard struck the pavement with this. You can see there's a blob of sealant over here, so I guess it did its job. And in essence, the lesson I got from this is that if you're trying something new, expect trouble. Thankfully I had a spare tube. Why I didn't use it? Because there was just 15 kilometers to go, and if necessary, I live in a fairly urban area, so I could put the tube in and find a compressor there. I wanted to check whether this is going to hold, and it held beautifully. So something that's good and something that's bad. Don't use these. Don't use these if you think you're going to be using compressors on gas stations, especially if your area has one of those newfangled ones, automatic, which think for you instead of giving you a pistol, something with a gouge. So, that's the story for today. I hope to see you on a proper content video, which is coming. It should have been released 5 days ago, but this story developed and developed and developed.